It is so good to be with you, people of God. How are you? How are you? In this time of talking about Jesus building, we're racing through Scripture. We've gone through one book so far. Now we're on to Exodus. So we're talking about free. Free to be Jesus' people and serve Him. So I got a question for you. Who are you? Who are you? When somebody asks you, who are you? What do you say? What do you think? Me. Yeah? And questions of identity are huge today. Who are we? Who are you? Is a huge question. And how do I discover who I am? Is a huge question. What would be the source of how I would know who I am? So Rene Descartes, in trying to figure out if there was anything certain, he doubted everything until he finally came down to say, I think, therefore I am. So if I am, then it must also be that, and he built up a whole, back up to where he started, philosophy of understanding that everything actually exists and so forth, but he came down to, I think, therefore I am. John and BT says, in Africa we think more, I am because we are. I am part of a family, an extended family. I am a part of my tribe. I am because we are. It's us that makes me, me. And in Tanzania, honestly, people didn't have nearly the kind of identity questions that it seemed that Americans do. Because they knew who they were. They knew who their father was. They knew who their clan was, and they kind of knew who they were. Now, things are changing. But I am because we are. And we, according to Scripture, we looked at this, we are the image of God. Now, notice I changed it from some of what I said before, that we tend to say, I am the image of God. We had some teaching recently. God keeps bringing me back to this thing of we are the, in Scripture it says, God said, let us, the Trinity, create humans in our image, male and female. He created them, and then he said to them, be fruitful and multiply, rule the earth. Now, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but I can't be fruitful and multiply. I needed some help from my wife. And then once we had some kids, I needed help from a lot of other people because we couldn't handle it all. Julie watched our kids one day a week, and people different. It took us to be fruitful and to raise some kids. And we are the image of God. We, as we relate to each other in love, are demonstrating God who is love. And I am just one part of the body. I can't really do it. So it's true that I am in the image of God. And following somebody else, I've been doing a little bit of practice. So as I walk around Como Park or even drive, I look at people and say, image of God, image of God, image of God. Try that. In fact, look right now at somebody next to you and say, you are the image of God. Okay? Say that to somebody next to it. You are the image of God, Connie. And now I want you to say it different. I want you to turn to them and say, we are the image of God. Look at somebody and say, we are the image of God. Only together can we really be the image of God. It's really easy to be holy by yourself. But if you demonstrate God's holiness together, that's really amazing. And then it goes on and it says, in Exodus, it says, we are Yahweh's people because He redeemed us. Can you look at somebody and say, we are Yahweh's people? Because He redeemed us. That's kind of like points on your Delta card, right? You can redeem it for flights. What is redeemed? We don't have any idea what that is. We redeem mileage points, right? That's about it for redemption. So we're going to look a little bit at what redemption is. But the main thing we're going to do today is we're going to eat together today, rejoicing. We're going to celebrate what? We are going to celebrate the Passover. Because Jesus said, where am I going to celebrate the Passover? I earnestly wanted to celebrate the Passover with you, my disciples. So we went to find where he was going to celebrate the Passover meal, which celebrated the Exodus. So we're going to celebrate the Exodus today. And as he was doing it, Jesus was celebrating the cross. He said, this is my body and this is my blood. This is the new covenant. He was celebrating a new covenant. And we're also going to celebrate the consummation, when this is all going to really happen. When we're going to eat the marriage supper of the Lamb together. This is all happening right here, right today, folks. We get to celebrate all of that together today. But honestly, it's so big that most of us don't really know what we're doing when we do this. Or we have an idea, but there's a lot more to it. And I've just really been enjoying learning more about what there is to it, especially this word redemption. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that today. So who are we? Well, we don't know who we are unless we know who our Redeemer is. If we're the redeemed people of God, we need to know who the Redeemer is. And then other people should be able to look at us and see who the Redeemer is by the redemptive lives that we live together. Who is Yahweh? Who is Jesus? Now, Jesus, Yeshua, means Yahweh saves. And when we say Yeshua or Yesu or Jesus, we're saying Yahweh saves. And Jesus, by the way, is Yahweh. He's part of the Trinity, right? Every time you read the Lord in the Old Testament, especially when it's in capitals, it means Yahweh, but you can also read it as Jesus. That's why when they said Jesus is Lord, in the New Testament, they were saying a lot. Jesus is King, not Caesar. Jesus is Yahweh. They were saying a lot. So, we are redeemed by Jesus, by Yahweh, by our Passover lamb. And that blood spread over the Passover door. We're going to talk some more about that too. But there's so much in this. So why did Jesus choose Passover? Jesus was at 3 Passovers, but he picked one where he was going to die. He said, go and prepare. Jesus sent Peter and John ahead. No, now this is Luke 22:7. Now the festival of unleavened bread arrived, when the Passover lamb is sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John ahead and said, go and prepare the Passover meal so we can eat it together. That's what we're eating together. And then he talked about where they were going to do it. They went off to the city and found everything. And then he sits down with the apostles together at the table. Jesus says, I've been very eager to eat this Passover meal with you before my suffering begins. For I tell you now that I won't eat this meal again until its meaning is fulfilled in the kingdom of God. How is its meaning going to be fulfilled? Then he took a cup of wine. It was we're going to talk more about that part. But he chose this time, he chose this meal, because he said what's going to happen at the cross is what happened at the Exodus. So what happened at the Exodus? He was sacrificed as the Passover lamb. In Luke 9:31, Jesus meets Moses and Elijah on a mountain. And he shines with glory like Moses did. And he's meeting Moses, the bringer of the law, the Torah, and Elijah, the representative of the prophets, who called the people back to living the Torah. And they were talking about his exodus that he intended to fulfill in Jerusalem. Now, there are different Bible translations. Sometimes they say his departure, which is what Exodus means. But it wasn't just his departure. It was his exodus. How do you fulfill a departure? He's fulfilling the Exodus. They're talking about his fulfilling of the Exodus in Jerusalem, on that other mountain. So, what does it mean to be redeemed? How would we know what it means to be redeemed? So, the Mission of God's People, Chris Wright, he's also got the Mission of God. He's got a lot of good stuff. He's got a whole chapter on people who are redeemed for redemptive living. And he talks about what a redeemer is. Now, we don't really get this because it's not part of our society. But sometimes we have movies where, because someone's part of your family, your wife is kidnapped, so you do everything possible to release her, to free her. That's the redeemer idea. Or maybe it's somebody fighting in a war, a citizen kind of thing. So there's some examples. A redeemer is somebody who would have, if you killed somebody in your family, you were supposed to go be the redeemer and kill the murderer. And then if the murderer was innocent, they could run to one of the cities of refuge. But vengeance for that was part of what a redeemer did. A redeemer bought out of slavery. If somebody got so in debt they ended up in slavery, or if their land got in debt so they had to lose their land, somebody in the family would pay that debt. Now, it could be super expensive to pay off somebody's debt. I don't know how much of a covenant family we are. Anybody checked anybody else's credit card? Anyway, they repaid other people's debt because they're part of the family. And then keeping a brother's family name alive by taking his wife and having children with her. And that was really expensive. I mean, Boaz did it, but somebody else was like, oh, no, I can't do that. That's too expensive. I got my own kids to think about. There was somebody else who did something similar, Judah's son, who was like, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to raise somebody else's kids for their name. So those are some of the things that a redeemer did. But in Exodus, we get the picture of redemption. But first we have to know, who is your redeemer? Which question is, who is your king? That's part of the question in Exodus. This is, in Exodus, we have freedom from slavery to the gods, to Pharaoh, to other kings, to covenant with Yahweh. Now, the Exodus story is used a lot of different ways in a lot of places. And here's how we sometimes use the Exodus story. We like freedom so much in our society. So let's take a little philosophical tour. We were talking about this before. When in medieval times, when the divine right of kings was kind of falling apart and magical priests who could make things happen, it's kind of going down, that then Western liberalism, in other words, liberty, let's be free. They said, well, how else could we build a society that wasn't built on kings and other things like that? And they said, philosophers like Locke and Hume and Hobbes, others, said, actually, we're all individuals. And it's we as individuals who decided to come together and sort of form a society. And we agreed that we, for the sake of the pursuit of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, we would get together and have a contract where we together would just, help each other out as individuals to have a society. And that, my folks, is what is in all of our heads now. I'm an individual. But hey, you know where it really came from? We were made in the image of God, and then this serpent came along and said, you could be free. You could do whatever you want. You could decide what's good or evil. You could be God. And Eve bought it. She ate it. So did Adam. That's where individualism really came from. I get to be free. So a lot of us tell the Exodus story about, we don't have to have any king. I can do whatever I want. That's the snake talking. Because we actually need each other. We're dependent on each other. That's not the story we tell. Independence is what we're all about. And for some of us, it works some of the time for a little part of our lives. Until we have a baby, and then it gets less independent, right, Emily? Somebody's dependent on you, and then you got to depend on other people, and it's like falls apart, this whole independence thing. We get old. Some of us get old. And then we might have to depend on other people. When we're young, of course, we have to depend on other. So anyways, the question is, who is our Redeemer? Who is Yahweh? Who makes us... So my point was, we didn't move from slavery to freedom, serving Pharaoh to serving myself. We moved from slavery to a king who thinks he's God, to the gods, to a God who redeems us, invites us into covenant to serve him. When Moses comes, he says, Yahweh says, let my people go so they can serve me. Sometimes it's translated worship, same word. They're going to Sinai to worship, to serve Yahweh, to make a covenant with him, to have him as king. And I've said it before in the words of Dylan, you're going to have to serve somebody. It may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. It might be yourself, but then you end up enslaved to something, addicted to something. So, it's in the picture is not only moving from Egypt to Sinai, it's also moving from not knowing Yahweh or who he is to eating a covenant meal at Sinai with Yahweh and having him move in. They take Sinai with them in the tabernacle. Eden is restored in the tabernacle. That covenant relationship with God is restored at Sinai. Not completely, because it's going to be fulfilled later. It's from distant. Does God even care that we're here? To living together in covenant. It's a marriage. It's a redeemer. So Chris Wright says, a redeemer will do whatever it takes and to pay whatever it costs to deliver his people from all that oppresses them. That's what a redeemer is. This is my people, this is my family. I will do anything, pay whatever it takes to deliver them from everything that oppresses them. This is corporate. Again, we tell the freedom story individually. I'm free. I'm redeemed. God loved me so much, he just gave everything for me. Yes. But it's really we. We are a people free. A corporate people of God. And it is holistic. The people in Exodus are politically oppressed. An alien, outside people who, because Pharaoh and his people are afraid of them, get oppressed and enslaved. It's economic. Because all of their labor, all of their land, they have no land, their labor is all given to the empire. It's social. He starts throwing their babies in the water, killing their sons. And it's spiritual. They're enslaved to these gods. And this king who says he is the image of God. He is the king. It's everything. Now, we tell this story different ways. Okay? Some people tell just the spiritual story. We are sinners, and now I am delivered by the Redeemer from my sin. That's true. But if you only tell the spiritual story and you miss the other stories, it isn't good news for some people. The reality is that nobody wanted preachers to go to the slaves in America because they were afraid they might become saved. Then there might be brothers and sisters, and then that Philemon book might show up, and I might have to free this person. So finally, when preachers said, no, I'll only preach about spiritual things and individual salvation. And I'll only tell them that God has got a promised land after they die. It's got nothing to do with now. Okay, you can do that. And nobody got saved. Until slaves started reading for themselves. Whoa, look at this Egypt stuff. Wow, there were slaves and they got free. And they started praying into that, believing in that, waiting for that, ready for that. And you got a Harriet Tubman, Moses, delivering people out of bondage. African-American church has seen it as holistic because it's had to be holistic for them. And then there's other people, of course, who leave out the spiritual, and they're all about, it's just about deliverance. Doesn't matter, it's nothing about Jesus or Yahweh or none of that stuff. It's just deliverance movements, just revolutions. It's all of it. Because, hey, is our world messed up and oppressed only spiritually? I don't think so. Is our world messed up and oppressed only politically? No. Only militarily? No. Only economically? No. It's all a mess. So it's all got to be redeemed. And we have a Redeemer who is able to do it all. He's also called the people who are to live redemptively like their Redeemer. But it's holistic and it's corporate. God is our Redeemer. We are His people. And the Passover is reliving that death, life, and freedom that came in the Exodus. Those are reliefs of slaves from ancient Egypt. So the question really is, you can't know who you are unless you know whose you are. So the real important question in a lot of Exodus is, who is Yahweh? So Exodus is continuing the story from Genesis, but Yahweh shows up to Moses and tells him who he is, and tells him what he's supposed to do because of who he is. He tells him, I'm the God who cares about these oppressed people. I've heard their cry. I've come to redeem them. And I'm the God of the covenant that I made with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and I'm going to fulfill my covenant. And so Moses goes back and talks to Pharaoh and says, I'm going to read it here. Let me get the context. Exodus 6. Oh, no, this is Exodus 5, I think. After this presentation to Israel's leaders, Moses and Aaron went and spoke to Pharaoh. This is 5:1. They told him, this is what Yahweh, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go so they may hold a festival in my honor in the wilderness. Is that so? Retorted Pharaoh. And who is Yahweh? Why should I, king, son of the gods, son of Amun-Re, listen to him and let Israel go? I know a lot of gods, but I don't know Yahweh, and I will not let Israel go. They are serving me and our gods. I don't know who Yahweh is. Did you ever notice Pharaoh has a snake on his head? Sounds a little like a snake. Snake was the symbol of life, healing, of death. There was a reason that Moses had a snake when he came to Pharaoh. But Pharaoh is the divine king. He's one of the gods of Egypt. He's representing all the gods, political, economic, spiritual. He's got it all wrapped up in his kingship. So, who is Yahweh? I will claim, he says to Israel, I will claim you as my own people. We're grafted into Israel. Remember that? I will claim you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am Yahweh. Whenever it says Lord, capital letters, it's Yahweh. That I am Yahweh, your God, who has freed you from your oppression in Egypt. So sometimes you read that, read Yahweh whenever you see Lord. Or read Jesus, because that's the other name we know Yahweh saves. That's the other name we're used to. I am Jesus, your God, who has freed you from oppression in Egypt. He's making himself known to the Israelites too. They don't know who he is. He shows who he is. And he says, I will rescue my people from the land of Egypt with great acts of justice. When I raise my powerful hand of justice to slam Egypt, to bring out the Israelites, the Egyptians will know that I am Yahweh. You don't know who you are until you know whose you are. And you are the redeemed people of Yahweh. You are the people who Yahweh redeemed from slavery, who Jesus redeemed from slavery, to serve him in a covenant, intimate relationship where you eat with him. Nobody ate with Pharaoh, by the way. No Hebrews anyways. But he is calling them into a covenant with him. Who are the enslaving enemies? Well, they're political, economic, social, spiritual. We talked about that already. The world, society enslaves us. The devil, Satan, enslaves us, the gods. And our own selfishness and sin enslave us. And we need to be free from all of those. We also need to be free from death. And Yahweh holds life and death. And Pharaoh couldn't get away with, he had promised, those who curse you, I will curse. He couldn't get away with killing Israel's sons without eventually his sons being killed. But we are free from, and these are all ways that Yahweh shows who he is to Pharaoh, to the Egyptians, to Israel, and to the whole world. He demonstrates his power, his compassion for the downtrodden, and his power, his creation, that all of this is not, you know, every one of these is a god that the Egyptians worshipped. The Nile, the frogs, every one of them represents gods that they, but it's, no, this is all just God's creation. 10 plagues that demonstrate he is in charge, that end with the Passover. The night that the angel came and killed all of the firstborn of Egypt, killed all of those who didn't put the blood of the Passover lamb over their door and say, I am claiming I am under the blood, so that the death of the lamb can substitute for my death that I deserve. So the Passover lamb was slain, and every year, this is the only story that the Israelites are told to retell. And retell and celebrate every year. And every year, one of the kids is supposed to say, what are we celebrating? What is this about? Why are we eating this special meal? And then the father is supposed to say, well, this is who we are. We're the redeemed people of Yahweh. This is what he did. This is who he is. This is who you are. You are the redeemed people of Yahweh. And then when Jesus died on the cross and did this all again, something amazing happened. We, Gentiles, who were not part of this people before that, of course, there were Gentiles who got pulled in because it was all about faith even back then. But we who had not been circumcised to be baptized, to be part of this people, were grafted in. And then Paul says, you who are not a people are now the people of God. You who were not redeemed are now redeemed. You are a citizen in a new kingdom. You are free. And this ritual drama combines the stories. This ritual, we combine our personal story of how we've been saved, our cultural story of how, as Israelites, we are redeemed, our social story, who we are, the cosmic story of what God is doing in the world and how he is conquering all the powers. It's combined here in this. The past, the present, the future are combined here. What he did in the Exodus, what he did at the cross, what he's going to do, what he's doing now, what he's going to do in the consummation of it all. So freedom forever. Are you ready for freedom? God is the one who rescues. You only need to trust the sacrifice that's already been put there. You need to just paint that over your life. And move to the covenant. And obey that covenant. Are you ready to serve Yahweh only now, or are you going to mix it with some other gods? This was the question that the Israelites had. Because they're always like, I don't know, it's kind of nice back there. I don't know, I brought a little bit of stuff from Egypt, I was just thinking about, maybe I could make this into a god. What rituals to remember our rescue are you going to use, and your children are going to use, to know who you are? So I'm not going to go fast into it, but they were redeemed for a purpose. Exodus 19, 3-6. He gets them, he delivers them, he rescues them from death, he rescues them from Pharaoh at the Red Sea. They celebrate. So one of the things we're supposed to do when we're redeemed is what? Rejoice! Celebrate! Sing a song. Hey, Pharaoh's been drowned in the Red Sea. We're free. That's part of what we do here. We celebrate. And then he shows them through the wilderness that he's also not only their deliverer, but he's their protector and provider. And then they get to Sinai and he says, okay, you've seen who I am. I am the one who has redeemed you. 19 verse 3. Give these instructions to the family of Jacob. Announce it to the descendants of Israel. God says, Yahweh says. Yahweh called to him from the mountain. Give this instruction. Announce to the descendants of Israel. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians. You know how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. He has brought them from far away to himself, up to the mountain. Now, if you will obey me and keep my covenant, you will be my own special treasure from among all the peoples on earth, for all the earth belongs to me. So all the earth belongs to him. Who owns Israel, Palestine? Yahweh owns it. Who owns this? The Ojibwe and then Anishinaabe and the Lakota were here. And now, I'm not talking about how well that was done, but this belongs to Yahweh. It always did. And we need to live it justly. But all of the earth belongs to God. And you will be my kingdom of priests, my holy nation. This is the message you must give to Israel. And later on, we hear that in 1 Peter. We are a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Gentiles are grafted into that. We are his people. And then in Exodus 24, 7-11, after this announcement, after the Ten Commandments, where he says, I've redeemed you, I've rescued you, now here's what you can do. Then he took the book of the covenant, read it aloud to the people. Again, they all responded, we will do everything Yahweh has commanded, we will obey. Then Moses took the blood from the sacrifices, from the basins, and splattered it over the people, declaring, look, this blood confirms the covenant Yahweh has made with you in giving you these instructions. Does that sound a little familiar to you? Well, the disciples had memorized that too when Jesus used exactly those words and said, this is the blood of the covenant. When he took the wine, he said, this is the blood of the covenant, my blood, in the new covenant, the fulfillment of the Exodus. Then Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel climbed up the mountain. There they saw the God of Israel. Under his feet there seemed to be a surface of brilliant blue lapis lazuli, as clear as the sky itself. And though these nobles of Israel gazed upon God, he did not destroy them. In fact, they ate a covenant meal, eating and drinking in his presence. That's what Jesus was doing with his disciples. That's what we get to do. Affirming the new covenant. Now we examine ourselves before we eat this meal. We say, is Yahweh really my God? Has he redeemed me? Am I giving him my life? Am I going to obey the instructions of his Torah, of his word? Am I living in covenant relationship with others? Am I living like a redeemed person? Are we living a redemptive life for each other and for our world? Passover was when they remembered all of the Exodus. And then the next part of Exodus is where they build a tent for God to dwell. The tent looks like Eden. It's a holy place, has to be separated from a sinful people. But God moves in. Sinai moves in among the people. The presence of God is with us. We have God's presence. We get to eat with Jesus, with Yahweh. This is my body. This is my blood. We get eat together here. Now, there's a lot of rituals that we take part in. We have a wedding. And we say, I'm going to live with you. I'm going to commit myself to you. Whatever happens, I'm committed to you. Economically, physically, in every way. Rituals affirm deep beliefs, feelings, and values. When you take this, we are doing something to remember all that he has done for us and to commit ourselves to that covenant. We are redeemed. Let's have the worship team come up. We probably shouldn't call it worship team because, like I said, worship is serving. Everything we do to serve, right? Everything you do when you go from here to serve in Yahweh's name. When you put in basement window guy, you're doing that as serving Yahweh. When we serve, everything we do. But redeemed by Jesus. On the cross, Colossians 2:15 says, he defeated all the enemies. On the cross, weak. You notice that Moses never drew a sword or a pistol? Do you notice that Jesus said, put your sword away? Moses and Jesus came weak and said, I put my hands in the hands of Yahweh. I believe he's king. I believe he'll deliver me. I believe he'll redeem me. And that's how Jesus, God's victory over all that opposes him and enslaves his creation, happened in the weakness of the cross. Why did Jesus choose Passover? Because he was celebrating the Exodus. And we are celebrating the Exodus together. Can I have the elders and ministry coordinators come up as well? Let's celebrate people. So Go in the name of Yahweh, in the name of the Father, of Yeshua, Yahweh who saves, in the name of the Spirit, because the threefold blessing in Deuteronomy, because Yahweh is smiling at you. He's turning his face towards you. May God turn his face towards you and make you a blessing as you go out and see his face out there. May he deliver you, redeem you, and make you his covenant blessing people. Amen.